What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato at the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, or the best of GoJo and Golic, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, wherever you get that on the radio. Busy morning with some new news injected already into our day, Claudia. What else do we got coming up on deck?
Yeah, some depressing news for Bill Belichick's job search, which we will get to. But first, all the madness that happened last night in the play-in tournaments for hoops. And tonight, Sixers, Heat, Bulls, and Hawks looking to keep their seasons going. And the van down by the river, Harbaugh beach living as they get ready for this upcoming season in LA. And the Charity Bowl 2024 college football analyst Spencer Hall joins the show to talk that and the upcoming season. But we have to get to the madness that was last night. The play-ins, Lakers, Pelicans, Warriors, Kings. Lakers got the dub. It was a little sweaty though, guys. 110-106 down the stretch. Williamson left the game tied. It was tied, just over 3 minutes left to play with a left leg injury. He put up 40, 11, and 5, so he had a huge impact on the game, but the Lakers eventually came out with the win. It was sweaty down the stretch. The Lakers did, though, have an 18-point lead. Bottom line, though, the game's over. Lakers won. GoJo, were you surprised at all?
No, I was sad. Dad, I think that's what this comes down to, because you can look at last night, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the entire evening was the entire Zion Williamson experience so far encapsulated in one game, right? Where we finally saw what we had been looking for here. Now, everyone's got to phrase it very carefully because, as we know, the play-in games aren't technically playoff games, but this was still Zion Williamson's first non-regular season game because of all the injury in his NBA career. This is our first opportunity to see him on the stage, and it worked. 40 and 11 in this game, looking every bit as explosive, creating for others the way that he had down the home stretch of the season. Everything we had ever wanted from Zion in these settings was on full display. And then just like that, it was taken away from us in the most pivotal moment of this game and completely swings the balance as the Lakers are able to hold on here. So, Dad, it made me sad because it really was everything what we had seen so far. Intermittent bouts of incredible ability undermined by his own body betraying him in the most important moments.
Yeah, listen, what you said first, too, I love it, the difference between the NBA and the NCAA. The NBA says these are not playoff games, all right? These games are in the ether. They don't really count. They were just trying to get to the top 8. The NCAA is trying to say, remember those Tuesday games? That's the first round. That's not a play-in. No, it's not. It's a play-in to get into the tournament, just like these are to get into the playoffs. So it is kind of a weird way to phrase it, but I'm with you. Listen, he played a season-high 71 games for him in his career because we know of the injuries he had already in his short career. So 71 games, and he was so dominant last night. I mean, he wasn't getting a lot of help. Brandon Ingram was 4-12. C.J. McCollum was not shooting well. He was 4-15, so he wasn't getting a ton of help. He was kind of it, and he was keeping New Orleans in this game. A team, by the way, think about this. They played the Lakers Sunday. If they win that game, they were the 6th seed and wouldn't have to do any of the play-in games, which means Zion is healthy going into the first round. But they lose that game to the Lakers on Sunday. Now they got to play him in the first round of the play-in, and now they lose, and now they're one loss from being out. So they could have been a 6th seed to 2 games later could be out of the tournament, and this all depends on Zion Williamson's leg. As Claudia mentioned, he drives the lane like he had been doing because he's just a bull and he does it. And he throws up a shot, ties it 95 all. He lands, and you kind of see the grimace on his face. He turns and looks at the bench and points to himself like, I'm hurt, as he's trying to jog down the other end. And players know it. You saw him. He pulled the jersey up over his head. He threw a towel going off. He knew something was wrong. And I loved afterward, his coach, Willie Green, played the perfect NHL head coach and said, it was lower leg soreness, or lower body soreness. That's the injuries you say in hockey. You don't get specific. You say upper body or lower body, and that's what Willie Green did. And he's going to have some imaging today, but obviously it was enough. He never, to keep him out of that game, and they got to play another game tomorrow to try and stay in the tournament. If he ain't playing, forget it. They're not in. So that was how it's swung, Mike, from Sunday to the possibility of Friday. Do you even have Zion back to possibly being out of the playoffs? Is really amazing. I know we haven't talked about the Lakers yet, but we're kind of maybe putting a bow on New Orleans here. And I'm with you because Zion finally had that year we were thinking that he could have. And this could be the start of something and where this team could possibly go. And, man, you saw in one landing on a drive how it all ended.
Well, yeah, because I think the reason we haven't mentioned the Lakers is there's not a surprise that the Lakers won. Like, I understand it could have gone both ways. There were plenty of people credibly picking the Pelicans, but with this Lakers team and the way that they had played down the stretch of their season, I think, 8 of their last 11 of their last 14 that they had won, D'Lo playing really well, like all of that stuff made sense in terms of why the Lakers could win and keep going on. But to then see this from Zion, and now, like you said, have that fall coincide within this game, another fall where now the future of their season's in question, and just another offseason with questions, I'm sure, about Zion Williamson, where, all right, in our last taste of him, what could be our last taste, whether he plays or not in this upcoming game against Sacramento,
right?
We might see him once again limping towards the locker room in a moment where his team needed him most. It's sad because this is another one of those guys that we've been banking on in a world that we're getting ready to lose some of our aging NBA stars. This was one of the guys a couple of years ago, along with John Morant in that same draft, that were supposed to be part of that next wave. And we feel like we keep getting close, but no cigar in this. So, Dad, we can give the Lakers credit, though, an incredibly balanced performance and attack from Los Angeles. When you look at this, D'Angelo Russell, like we mentioned, 21 points, 5 of 11 from 3 for a team that shot 40% from beyond the arc on the night. That had always kind of been the question mark with them. But when they get streaky and when they get hot there, and especially you get D'Lo going off the way that he did in this game, completely changes the balance of it, and they were able to take advantage when that injury happened down the stretch.
Yeah, because listen, James's line, 23, 9 rebounds, 9 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Anthony Davis goes for 20 and 15, but the two of them didn't shoot well. They shot 12 of 36. So it's not like they were lighting it up. But you mentioned D'Angelo Russell, all 5 starters in double digits for double figures for them. To me, the key, though, is when you get down to the end of the game, and this game still stayed somewhat close. It was a 4-point game after we mentioned 95 all when Zion went out. So this team was really behind the 8 ball trying to fight to stay in it. And it came down to free throws. And it's amazing when these games come down to something that has no defense, no nothing. It's just you, the ball, and the basket. And the Lakers were fantastic. I mean, Anthony Davis was 8 of 10 from the free throw line. LeBron was 10 of 10. They were 26 of 29 as a team. So they always, coming toward the end, they always kept it a 3-point or, more importantly, that 4-point lead to try and keep, the Pelicans from having that one-possession game to tie it unless someone was foolish enough to foul on a 3-point attempt. So their free throws really kind of helped them out at the end in a very, very balanced game, Claudia.
Well, Senior, let me ask you this then, because the Lakers did look good overall. I think, like we're saying, balanced offense. Nobody went off, had a crazy game. But is that going to work against the Denver Nuggets? Because, yay, good, well, they won, but now they're facing the Nuggets. I'm looking at the lines now. They're 6.5-point underdogs. The Nuggets north of minus 300 at the DraftKings Sportsbook to win the series. Senior, give me your confidence level right now in the Lakers at this point.
No.
Just no.
One word, no. No confidence. No confidence in a series. This is what we talked about before. We thought we were going to get Golden State and the Lakers as a matchup in the 9-10, and one of them would be out, and one of them would have a chance to come in and watch out for them. But you know what? It actually is a better situation, I think, for at least from a playoff experience, because you just don't know, even though Oklahoma City's played great, of the Sacramento New Orleans winner. Who's the A seed playing Oklahoma City? I'd rather be that team than the team playing Denver. And we saw what happened last year when Denver played the Lakers, with the sweep that went on. I don't know if it'll be a sweep, but the Lakers aren't going to win this thing. Denver's the best team. Yeah. I'd even put them over the Celtics. If you made me pick right now, I would say Denver repeats this thing. So my confidence level is a big-time nil, Claudia, big-time nothing.
So no number on the level, just a no-go, Joe. How about you?
Yeah, just a
no.
I think the zero, the O is kind of shaped like a zero, so we can probably put it as that because there's not a lot of reason. And Darvin Ham was very outspoken after the game on the idea that they would even think about ducking the Denver Nuggets in this series. And I saw Andrea Carter had a great line yesterday on ESPN where he said no one's about not ducking smoke at this junction. And that's right. Like LeBron James' team is never going to do that. And eventually, if you were going to go through the Western Conference this year, you were going to have to go through this Denver Nuggets team. And so it might be nice for them to just skip the middleman because I'm sure for a lot of these other teams near the top of the Western Conference, the Lakers could have made things a little bit interesting, especially if you get, Anthony Davis looked great down the stretch, had that huge rebound in the waning moments of the game off a missed LeBron fadeaway. Dad mentioned poor shooting night, but gets a chance to ice it late at the free throw line. All these things where those guys showing up the way they did, this team shooting the way they do when you get Austin Reeves going, when you get D'Angelo Russell going, when Rui Hachimura can pitch in there. Like, they've got enough guys to make it froggy on any given night. Yeah. But, Dad, I think for the Lakers team, the mark now and the way that we measure this is going to be about, all right, you've seen kind of a foundation set over the last couple of years with the current core of this roster. They brought so many of these guys back after that run to the Western Conference Finals last year. And with LeBron and Anthony Davis still at the core, it's, well, who are you going to then target this offseason to bring into what looks like solid foundation for this, knowing LeBron James is only going to get less and less reliable in terms of being the main guy all the time. You're going to need someone to offset that on a more regular basis. And so now you just look at this and go, all right, this is a house with really good bones. We have to turn it into a home this summer.
Yeah, because let's not forget when the regular season ended, this team was in the 8th slot. It's not like they were a top 3 team in the West. They were an 8th slot team. That's why we kept saying, wow, look at this matchup, maybe Golden State and LA. Well, they were at that point in the 9th and 10th slot. So it's not like they were tearing anything up, though the Lakers did go on a nice run at the end of the season. And I'm with you. Your line, it's probably a line I wouldn't think of, but you young kids, they could be froggy on any night. I agree with that, but they're not winning 4 out of 7 against Denver. That's just where they are. And I'm with you. What do you do? It's a good team. It's a good team, but it's not going to be a championship, this team this year. So I am with you. What do they do? Because you have to do it while you have LeBron. It's like when Tampa Bay had Tom Brady. It's the Jets have Aaron Rodgers. You've got to make every move you can to put yourself in position because the sands of time are running out. So you got to make hay with it.
So you've got that for LeBron, and the Lakers have I think 3 top picks that they can use and package there. So they're in a good situation to be able to go out there and land another superstar. Dad, that's the perfect lens to talk about the next game that we had last night, Claudia, where it's going to get real interesting this offseason in terms of Golden State, who's the end of career they value and how they want to go about trying to build a winner, because them losing to a Sacramento Kings team that was down Malik Monk and a couple of other important players due to injury was eye-opening, and especially how it went down for a couple of their guys, Claudia.
Yeah, speaking of dynasties and eras possibly coming to a close, you mentioned it. Kings were beat up, but it didn't really matter because Keegan Murray stepped up 32 points. Fox, of course, contributed 24, so bonus 16 and 12. The issue was the Warriors did not show up. Steph only 22 points. Klay Thompson went 0 for 10 from the field. 0 points. They got outshot, out-rebounded, outrun, out-hustled, everything you could think of. So at the end of the day, the question, of course, is, are you going to keep this core together, Steve Kerr?
We need Klay back. I mean, he's, I know he had a tough night tonight, but what he represents for us, the spacing, we're not a deep shooting team. We're a little top heavy, and Klay's presence means so much to the spacing on the floor, to the flow of the offense, and he's still got good years left. And I know I speak for everybody in the organization. We want him back. Obviously, there's business at hand, and that has to be addressed with Klay's representatives and Mike and Joe. But what Klay has meant to this franchise, as good as he still is, we desperately want him back.
Klay heading free agency, which is why we're having this conversation. Senior, after hearing what Kerr just said and seeing what AD did not do last night in a pivotal game, what's your reaction to this?
Well, I think Clay, it's nice to say you want him back, but this is a team, when they were winning championships, they didn't mind spending the money, or the luxury tax, the whole deal. They were willing to shell it out because you were getting trophies. This team isn't there anymore. They're already out. They one game play in and they lose and they're out. So what does Clay want? Clay's made good money, sure. He's a free agent and the players want to maximize that, but how far are you willing to go to keep him there to be one of your shooters to try and build a championship team? I don't think it's going to happen unless Clay is willing to take an unbelievably team-friendly deal and say, you know what, this is where I want to be. I want to see this team come back. But if he's looking to maximize his dollar, then, Mike, I don't think it's going to be there in Golden State.
Yeah, and I don't know how much Golden State would push to get him back there in terms of building whatever they're going to be to maximize the end of Steph Curry's run, because that's really what this is about. There's always been the conversation of that big three in the Warriors, the Splash Brothers, him and Draymond, but at the end of the day, Steph is the golden goose in the middle of all of this. Steph is the thing that makes it go, and he's the one who's, I think, career you've got to try and do the most right guy if we're going to position it the same way we talk about the Lakers, where, hey, you're here to maximize the remaining years of LeBron James the best while you have it. That's the same way for the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry, who's proven himself the only reliable one. Now, Klay Thompson down the stretch of the season had played a lot better the last 4.5 weeks of the season. He was the second leading scorer on the team, averaged just over 21 points a night, shot just over 48% from the field and 41% from beyond the arc. So he had played better down the stretch, but this was what popped up more often than we had ever seen from Klay Thompson during a lot of this season, was games like last night.
And like I said about the Lakers, who are going to be in the playoffs, but they were the A slot. The Golden State was in the 10 slot. So as good as guys were playing at times, they were 10th. So, they got some changes for them to happen. I don't think Clay's going to be a part of it. I think the Splash Brothers is going to be over. We'll see. Time will tell on that. Sacramento moves on to play at New Orleans. And they were good. They were good as well last night as far as all starters and double figures, just like the Lakers were. So we'll see what happens with them and New Orleans now. But Golden State, I definitely think changes are on the horizon.
Yeah, congrats to Sacramento. Enjoy absolutely no one talking about you today. I'm sorry, guys. That's just the way the cookie's about to crumble on this one here. You'll get your chance if you beat the Pelicans, but unfortunately, this is going to be questions abounding about the end of this version of the Golden State Warriors dynasty. Because, Dad, there are people I know that are frustrated with Steve Kerr in that Warriors fan base. I saw Nick Wright basically going in Twitter Spaces last night trying to talk them off the ledge when it comes to their coach, who Steve Kerr's going to be there. And you saw part of why at the podium there, in addition to the basketball stuff that, some people have questioned with Steve Kerr because the beginning of the dynasty, the way things went when he was away from the team and all that stuff. But the guy can coach ball. And the thing you saw at the podium there is also, he has a really good handle on the interpersonal stuff. He said all of the right things in support of Klay Thompson, who has meant a lot to that team, at the podium there, talking about, we want him back, but the business. And unfortunately, the business is going to be the thing that decides that. I think Steve knows that, but I think Steve also knew in that moment, hey, Klay has done a lot for this franchise. He's done a lot for Steve Kerr personally. And so we're going to put an arm around him in that moment. But Steph Curry, even in that post-game press conference, when he got asked about the future of that big three, basically boiled down to the answer that I'm sure everyone's going to be talking about today, which is, I just want to win. At the end of the day, Steph Curry understands what this is, and I think sees the picture pretty clearly. He commended Klay Thompson too, but Klay also has his own end of career to worry about here down this final stretch of years, and I think sees that it's going to have to look a lot different if he wants to avoid the play-in and being the 10 seed more often.
Much like in LA, you do whatever you have to put a team around LeBron to try and win a championship, even though Steph's, 4 or 5 years younger. The same thing is there, right? You got the greatest shooter in NBA history, still shooting well. So you got to build around him while he's still what he is to try. Now, they have many rings to show for what they've done, but like any team, you get some, you want more. And so I'm with Steph. I just want to win. So that's going to mean probably a different team around him.
And we have seen Steph have to weather more frustration because Klay Thompson hasn't been himself as a player. Draymond Green hasn't been able to keep himself on the court. And all the while, Steph is looking around wondering where this all went wrong. Dad, before we get to the Bill Belichick piece that just dropped, Jeremy Fowler, Seth Wickersham, Don Van Natta, about the failed coaching run at the end in the job interview process with the Falcons for Bill Belichick, and some interesting stuff in there that I think is just kind of telling about the state of the league at this point, in addition to the state of Bill Belichick's relationships leaving New England. Putting a bow on the Golden State Warriors, what do you think the big failing for this team and this franchise has been in the last few years that gets them to this point? Like, what do you think has gone wrong in that building where the team that was the premier dynasty of the early aughts is now one that's scrapping and clawing just to get into the play-in tournament and didn't seem like they had a ceiling much higher than that?
Well, listen, again, 4 championships, what a run they had, 15, 17, 18, and 22. 22 ain't that long ago. When they were wearing the crown. But you had basically 3 guys, Draymond and Steph and Clay to build around. And much like LA, after they won a championship, you have LeBron and AD. So it's all about fitting the pieces around them, right? That's what you're looking to do. I go back again to Tom Brady as just one person in Tampa Bay. What are you putting around him to get as much as you can out of the great players that you have? So I would say, now, one, Clay has slipped some, right? He went from starter to coming off the bench back to starter again. He had been playing somewhat well, as we mentioned, 0 for 10, had no points last night. So when you get one of the greats that's starting to slip, that's time. You're going to probably be time to move on as we talk about him with free agency. But it's all about tinkering with the pieces around that, Mike, and how well they can fit and how much change. We've seen a lot since AD and LeBron have been together and how they've tried to tinker with it in LA. And they've tried to stay the same, more the same than LA in Golden State. And you just wonder now the tinkering you're going to do, the right moves that you have to make, because I keep reiterating, as much as these guys are one of the greatest of all time, the greatest shooter of all time, they were basically 8 and 10. So they understandably have a ways to go to get back to being considered in the top of the conference. As at one game on a given night, you could put them up with anybody, but you can't do it in a series, and that's what the NBA is. So I think a lot of it is a tinkering around, and when your greats start to slide a little bit, like we see Clay doing, what are you going to put around them?
Yeah, I think certainly between Clay's play on the court because of injury starting to degrade to the point where it's just not consistently as reliable there. Draymond Green, too, just never really putting the clamps on his personality in a way that allows him to be as available as you'd like him to be in some certain pivotal moments. We saw that frustration with Steph down the stretch, but you're right with the other guys, too. Like, You look at every attempt really in the draft and otherwise for a lot of this has never materialized in that other guy stepping up, right? Like there was hope for a while that it was going to be Andrew Wiggins. They obviously drafted James Wiseman 2nd overall, and that didn't go well in offering them a style or a part of that offense that we hadn't really seen before. Jonathan Kuminga in there now has had intermittent bouts of looking incredible, but no one's ever been able to really take a lot of the load consistently off of Steph, Clay, and Dre. Like, obviously, the championship run notwithstanding, where you saw a lot of great Andrew Wiggins, where you saw the best of him show up in certain spots, I think that ultimately can be shown up there as well. But again, it's difficult because you're trying to just get every last drop you can out of a trio in Steph, Clay, and Dre that accomplished some all-time things. I do think what you brought up earlier, Dad, is probably worth mentioning. Like, yeah, we don't have to shortchange what this was. Like, sticking the dismount on this as we get ready to talk about the Patriots is an almost impossible task. It's almost never going to look the way that everybody wants it to look, but that's the challenge for Golden State going forward now, is how do you shake the bag up enough to get the best out of what's left?
Right. Yeah. And time will tell. We'll see. We'll see what the transformation is, starting with Clay. Do they bring him back? If they don't, what other pieces around? Because, you look at Oklahoma City, number 1 seed, youngest team in the NBA. So it's not like they're going anywhere. Denver, not like they're going anywhere. So they have a road, both they and the Lakers have a road to get to the top. Minnesota, when Karl Anthony Towns is healthy. We are seeing what the Clippers, probably not for too long because they have a bunch of older guys in the core there as far as years down the road. So there's a ways to go to get to the top of this conference.
Yeah, you mentioned all that young talent. You're only going to get a better version of Wemby from here on out, too, in San Antonio. So the road gets tougher. There's some freakish young bigs in this conference, obviously led by Nikola Jokic at the top of all this. And it's going to be interesting to see what style the Golden State Warriors are willing to embrace as we go forward, too. But, Claudia, if we're going to talk about styles and talking about this Bill Belichick conversation, what was this like this morning in New England? An article dropped. Seth Wickersham, Don Van Natta, and Jeremy Fowler voted off the island, an inside look at Bill Belichick's failed job hunt. We all got a chance to check this out this morning before the show. And Claudia, I'd ask you, being in New England, being a Patriots fan here, was there anything that surprised you about this and the way that Bill Belichick's attempt at securing his post-Patriot job was portrayed?
What stood out to me was Arthur Blank and his top people creating a list of their top candidates, and Belichick didn't even make the top 3. And this is after the fact that he said, I don't want total control. I'm not going to try to do what I did in New England. I just want to try and coach and get you guys to the end. And nobody has faith in him, guys. And we talked about this earlier. You can see on the board here, the Falcons didn't rank Belichick in their top 3. Kraft's chats with Arthur Blank, I don't think helped. And if you watch the Dynasty, you can probably agree. We talked about this earlier, though. He's just an old school coach. And just like the younger players are going to have the edge on the aging core in the NBA, it's the same thing here. Why would you want to take Belichick in for a year, maybe a year or two, until he gets Don Shula's record and then he's out, right? So the motivation's not there for the teams. But as a New England fan, it's a little depressing, GoJo. To answer your question, I'm a little sad today for Belichick.
Oh, yeah, Dan, I think it is. It's just startling to see one of the all-time legends of the sport be clearly told by most of the league, either jobs that didn't consider him altogether all that much, or the Atlanta job where in the article they said he felt like it was his after these 2 interviews, basically shown, we don't believe your style of coaching fits what we want to do in this league anymore, in a league that's supposed to be more collaborative and has a different kind of player in it than the one Belichick came up coaching.
Yeah, I think a couple of things here, and Claudia mentioned them both. I think longevity. Nobody wants to hire a coach for a few years and say, oh, yeah, you're going to be our head coach for a few years. And we know Belichick wants to get that record, but Belichick, I'm sure, loves coaching. You don't do it for that long and not love coaching. So he'd want to get that record, but how much are you building? You bring in Kirk Cousins as your quarterback, so at least you're good from that position and building around him. We kind of like the direction Atlanta is going, but what's the longevity of Bill coaching your team? And then the other part of it is his style. He can sit there and say, I won't do that anymore. Tough for an old dog to make some new tricks, right? I mean, that's difficult to do when you've coached that long. And we saw a guy who lost Tom Brady and had to go to a new quarterback flounder for a few years. This is a bad team. Something you weren't used to saying the last couple of years is this is the worst team in the AFC East, and they were. So you look at that as well to say, okay, all the things that one of the reasons, being successful is the talent that he got around him in New England, the versatile talent. He had guys knowing 2 and 3 different positions. It all worked. It all came together, but it hadn't the last few years. And just his style with control, I just don't think that flies anymore. We're at a different era of coaching right now. And I don't think it will be interesting. Is he going to get another job interview in the next cycle? He ain't getting younger. He's only getting older. And I really wonder why they brought him in for a second interview. Was that just out of respect? If nobody had him in their top 3 in the secret vote, why was he brought back for a second interview to where even Bill thought the job was his, flying down on Arthur Blank's private plane, doing that second interview? He thought the job was his. I mean, I'm not really sure why they did that if he wasn't in the top 3 of all the people that were voting for this.
Yeah, I think... And I wonder how far the words of Robert Kraft go, because that's the other thing that comes screaming out of this article the same way for a lot of people it came screaming out of the 10-part Patriot docuseries was there just doesn't seem to be a lot of love lost between Robert Kraft and his former head coach. And if you're looking for, hey, I need to dispel this idea that I'm difficult to work with or that it's going to be less collaborative with me in there, you didn't get help from the person that was one of your partners for a long time. It sounds like in this process, who was also a major confidant of Arthur Blank. And all of it winds up with Bill Belichick getting ready to learn TV, buddy. joined by a guy that's looking forward to getting his name called pretty early in this thing here, former star Michigan wide receiver and national champion, which I'd imagine still feels incredible to hear. Roman Wilson, kind enough to give us some time today. Roman, how you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing good. How you doing?
Doing well, man. Doing
we
well.
Are doing
Take
well.
us through how you're feeling right now. It's draft week. We're finally here. It's going to get going here soon. What are the emotions like for you as it's finally the end of what's, I'm sure, been a long process?
Yeah, I mean, the process so far has been good. I haven't really got like too much excited about like the draft and things like that. But, now that I'm getting closer to it, I feel like, the nerves are starting to go. I'm getting more excited about what team might pick me and things like that. So it's starting to kind of hit me more, it's kind of like a dream kind of finally coming true. So, it's all like full circle moment for me.
You win the national title, and then you immediately have to start preparing for the combine, which goes away from football as you prepare for all those drills. What did you feel that you needed to do at the combine to open some eyes?
For me, I felt like it wasn't too much, just go to the combine, put up a good 40 and just run some good routes. That was a big thing for me. And I knew I was going to do. I knew I was going to run a good time. I knew I was going to go kill the routes. And then probably just interviews, just going and be myself. And, I was just kept telling myself, if I just be who I am every day, then, I'll be fine. Just trust the process. It'll be good.
Was that a part of the process that you leaned on other guys for? Was that something, your former head coach now and Jim Harbaugh, who was come from the NFL, was back in the NFL, was that something he was able to kind of help you guys prepare for?
I feel like just the way he ran the program at Michigan, that definitely just helped me out with like everything else besides just like the combine or just day-to-day life. I mean, the way he, helped raise me into the man I am, it just helps me with everything, just every day-to-day activities I do. I just feel like I'm more well prepared for it.
Yeah, you were pretty prepared at the combine, running a 4.39, I believe. That certainly will work, no doubt about that. Because there's obviously no pads anymore once you're done, with the season, what have been some of the other things? What have the interviews been like for you in talking to teams and what they're asking you?
Most of my interviews, or pretty much all of them, have been really good. I feel like I'm a very smart guy that understands football well. So, I mean, as far as like the plays go and everything, like that's been easy. I feel like most teams that we mostly talk about me playing inside or outside, what they think that's going to happen. And, most of them see me playing inside and potentially playing in the league for a long amount of time just because of like my skill set and how I can play inside. And, they think I can play outside too, but, for me, it's mostly just been like getting to work on that inside and, getting the chains moving and just making big plays from the inside.
Has there been any questions? And I know, J.J. McCarthy, your quarterback, who's been a huge story this entire draft cycle, there's been a lot of people questioning, hey, your offense didn't throw it as much as these other quarterbacks that we see coming out here. For you in that receiver room, for an offense that was really competing, did have this great ground game, were there any people that had questions about that, considering what your guys' offense looked like?
You talking about like teams?
Yeah.
No, I mean, there wasn't really any questions about like my targets or my stats or my yards or anything like that. I feel like most teams, like we just talk about the film and we pull up what I got. I feel like the stats really don't matter at the end of the day, but, they're helpful in ways, but, teams just want to see me play ball. They don't really care about, how many targets I'm having in a game. They just want to see what I do with that one target.
So I'll let you explain it. You live by the mantra, no block, no rock. What does that mean?
If you don't want to block, you're not touching the ball. I mean, and this is something I've learned from a lot of different teams too. Like they'd be telling me, like if you think you got to play, like then you got to go and show me like that you want it first. Like you're willing to, sacrifice who you are for the betterment of the team.
And I think we see that around the NFL with these Shanahan and McVay schemes that ask so much of wide receivers in that position. You're very well set up to be an integral part of any of those there. And you said it goes back to kind of how you guys were raised inside that Michigan program. Take us in that locker room. I know people talked a lot about the J.J. McCarthy quote about when he's getting recruited, hey, if you're going to come here and chase girls and be distracted, don't, because we're here on a mission. What did that mission look like, especially this last season, this culmination that ultimately ended in a national championship for you guys?
I'd probably just say like a lot of people in the locker room just holding each other accountable, making sure the locker room's clean, making sure lockers are clean, making sure people are, in the right areas, not showing up on time, putting in extra work after practice, before practice, being in the right mindset. I feel like that was a big thing in the locker room, was just like making sure guys are saying the right things and like manifesting the right things instead of being like a downer or dreading practice or dreading lift, try to keep everyone uplifted. And, I feel like, people did a good job doing that in the locker room this year.
You look at where your coach, Jim Harbaugh, went to the Chargers, and they got rid of their two biggest receivers in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and a tight end and a running back. What's your thought on the possibility of them calling your name on draft?
Yeah, I would love to play for Coach Harbaugh again. I mean, he's a great coach. He's a great guy. The Chargers got a great team and in a great location. It's like definitely a dream spot to go to.
What do you think separates Jim from other people when it comes to being a coach? He's a very quirky personality that we all see from the inside, but you know the man. So what does set him apart?
I'd probably say, first of all, I mean, he's just one of a kind. I feel like something that's different that not all coaches have. I mean, they do, but I mean, he played in the NFL. He played at Michigan. I feel like at the end of the day, he's really just one of the boys that turned into a coach at the end of the day. So I feel like, he's got the upper hand on that for sure.
You guys have so many players that may be drafted this year, and certainly one of the names you hear a lot is J.J. McCarthy as he goes up the draft boards. And there are some people kind of scratching their heads at how could he be rising so much after the season is over. They didn't throw the ball a ton. It was more a running team, as you certainly know. Give us your thoughts on J.J. McCarthy from how you think his transition from college to pro will be.
I think he'll transition very well. I feel like he's an incredible athlete, incredible leader, incredible person, and incredible arm talent. I mean, he's going to figure a way. He's going to figure it out. At the end of the day, he's going to go and he's going to work hard. He's going to he's going to check all the boxes and some more. I feel like looking back at it in like 5 years, he'll probably be one of the better quarterbacks in this draft. I feel like he's just going to have an incredible career and he's going to do great.
So a lot of confidence in him, and we know a lot of confidence in yourself. This is a class that gets talked about a lot for the wide receiver talent and how deep it is in this group, all the different names that people have known coming out this year. What do you see as the thing that sets you apart from other guys in this class in terms of your overall game compared to a lot of these great wide receivers?
Yeah, definitely my speed. My speed shows up first. My ability to run routes and create separations for myself. My ability to be reliable and be where I'm supposed to be at all times, and just being consistent, man. Just being the same person every day, consistently coming into the building, coming into the games, catching the ball, running good routes, but just being open. I feel like a lot of guys can't say that. I don't feel like a lot of guys can say that they're open on every single play. Or I just feel like, I'm always where I'm supposed to be. I'm always doing the right things, and I'm always making big plays.
So you're days away from having a chance to, I'm sure, live your dream out of playing in the NFL. At what point in your career, however old you were, did you think, I knew we all dreamed about playing in the NFL, but did you actually say, you know what, I believe I have the ability to play in the NFL? At what age was that? Yeah,
100%. I mean, to quote a GOAT, I mean, ever since birth, I felt like I could make it to the NFL. I'm not going to lie. I feel like there was never been a doubt in my head that, I couldn't make it.
That's all. So what's it look like now on draft day? Do you have something planned? Are you going to have a party with friends? What's your idea for the draft day now?
Right now I'm just going to get an Airbnb, just have some a chill celebration with my family members, just close friends and things like that. Nothing too crazy, but hopefully it all goes well.
You got your eye set on anything to specifically buy with that first NFL money you get?
I mean, I got no clue. I would love to get property or a house, but that may be a little too much money. But I don't know. You guys got any recommendations? What would you get?
You know what? Property's a pretty good answer. Yeah, I was going to say. You got time for property there. Treat yourself to something because it's the culmination of a lot of hard work you've put in till this point. And we know more hard work starts once you get that name called, but it is at least a real incredible mile marker along the way of what's been an awesome football journey for you. So, Roman, congratulations on everything, all the success up till this point, the national title, and eventually having your name called here. Some team's going to get real lucky, and we're excited to see where you land.
GoJo and Golic, the play-in, not playoffs yet. Madness continues tonight in the Eastern Conference. Let's take a look at the odds to win the East at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Surprise, surprise, the Celtics still the favorite, -175. Bucks next at 7-1. Then you have the Sixers who face the Heat tonight. Sixers plus 750, Heat 14-1. The line tonight is Philly, the 5.5-point favorite. They have a healthy Embiid. They're on an 8-0 run. So Sixers GM Daryl Morey, how do you guys think you're doing right now?
Look, I think we're in this weird position, obviously, of having some significant challenges during the regular season, but we feel like we're one of the favorites. I mean, I don't see 3, 4, 5 teams better than us when we have everyone, which unfortunately we don't have everyone. It looks like D'Anthony is going to take a little time, and he's been a significant contributor, as we know. Robert is also someone who has been a significant contributor in the past. So, but we have the horses. We feel like we go in as one of the favorites, but we've got the added challenge Amy mentioned that it's pretty rare. You have to win one more one and done to maintain being the favorite right up front.
Well, Daryl, there's actually 6 teams better than you, according to DraftKings, because you're tied right now with the Suns at 19-1. Just saying. GoJo, do you agree with him that maybe they should be bigger favorites in this spot at this point?
I wouldn't say bigger favorites just because we're all kind of still somewhat tepid about the looming specter of postseason Miami Heat basketball. But, Dad, I think we can officially dub the Philadelphia 76ers, based on all of the talk and punditry that we've seen over the last few days, the team that nobody wants to see in the postseason right now.
Without question. I'm putting my money there. I'm saying they're the team that's going to challenge Boston. Milwaukee we've seen has fallen off. The Knicks are very intriguing and interesting. I'm really looking forward to what that Jalen Brunson led team is going to do in the postseason, jumping up to the 2 seed. But the 76ers, this is what I thought of them. I thought they'd be the 2 or 3 seed, and they were when Embiid was healthy. And obviously they dropped down to play-in status when they lost Embiid, but have won 8 straight. And he's back and he's playing extremely well. So I see them getting the win tonight. I see them being that 7th seed. Then we'll see the other teams fighting out for the 8th seed. I feel bad. And no one in the world watching the Bulls and the Hawks tonight as one of those teams try to stay involved and get into the playoffs. But I think Philadelphia, in my opinion, is the biggest threat to the Celtics going into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a good reminder based on what we've got coming later in the night. Both of these teams in the 76ers and Heat should be the ones that make the postseason. All you've got to do is win one game, and I'm pretty confident that given the competition, whoever loses this one, barring injury, will win one game. But, Dad, it's always so interesting with Miami because part of me is like, man, if this keeps happening, we're never going to stop these Heat culture people. It really, God, we love our friends at the Levitard show. I love Jeremy Taché, but I do wonder what it ever looks like if this stalls out early enough to where Miami's forced to go into an offseason and go, all right, we might need to tinker with some things around there. And last year we got such all-time Jimmy Butler early in the postseason. We were comping this guy to Michael freaking Jordan for the first little stretch of last year's postseason run before it seemed like the energy finally ran out. You wonder how much more of that he's got left in the tank right now, or if that energy's now going to country music videos.
But how nervous are the Celtics? I think Philly wins tonight, and then I think the Heat beat the winner of Atlanta and the Bulls to be the 8th seed. So how nervous are Claudia, how nervous are Celtics fans going to be? It's the Miami friggin' Heat, and we've seen what Jimmy Butler has done with that team, and now all of a sudden we question what the Celtics do in the postseason. They could be their own worst enemies, and here comes Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat.
I want to say I'm not worried because we're so much deeper than them, but the issue is that's what the Heat does. They go against all of the odds every single time, so I am deep down a little bit worried.
And Mike, I'll say this. I do think 2 of the biggest threats to the Celtics will be playing in round 1 because I do think Philadelphia wins tonight, and then it's Philly and the Knicks. right? Philly at the Knicks for that 2-7 matchup. And I think that could be one of the best first-round matchups, the way the 76ers have been playing since Embiid came back, and the way the Knicks are playing right now. These are two, without question, the better teams in the conference, matching up in the first round.
Yeah, and I mean, that'll be interesting for Embiid because we're all worried about what we saw at the end of the regular season, right? Joel Embiid limping over to the sideline, anything with that lower body injuries that he suffered this year flaring up, and especially if it winds up being a Knicks team that's hallmark under Tom Thibodeau is physicality. They're going to go out there and try and grind you, and so that's the thing I think you'd be most worried about with Joel Embiid. Even if this 76ers team, though, Dad, represents, I think outside the play-in tournament, we know ratings grab, right? More teams involved at the end of the season produces what we got going into this last weekend, but now produces this opportunity like we saw for the Heat last year where someone can actually make that rise and go into this. The other thing it represents, and I oddly enough think of something like the college football playoff where you designed a system in college football that in theory was supposed to be able to account for roster changes. Hey, did you have someone on the field that all of a sudden you lost to injury? Or like the 2017 USC team, hey, you started Sam Darnold 3 games into the year in an expanded playoff, all of a sudden we'd be like, well, there was a major change in that team. They're one of the best teams in football now. With the play-in, this accounted for, all right, you had a team in the Philadelphia 76ers careening towards a cliff, and now we get the opportunity to make sure they're in there. Now, based on where they finished, if we had just had a normal playoff, they would have been in there. But it makes it a little bit more exciting version of that and creates this momentum now for a team that would, otherwise not have been in this position were it not for Joel Embiid's injury, and does kind of shift the balance of the pieces on the chessboard.
Like we said, then the second game, the team that can still get in, either Chicago or Atlanta, and East Coast time, that game starting at about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Yeah, good luck with that one.
I cannot even the news begin now to pretend to care about that game. I usually try and massage every fan base and try and do right by that. I just cannot even begin to care about this one. This is the one I think we're all allowed to just get some sleep.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's a tough call right there, considering they're both under 500, 39 and 43, 36 and 46. It's kind of ugly. The news to me is that Giannis now in the first round may not be starting out this series. As they take on the Pacers beat them, were 4-1 against them all before Doc Rivers got to this team. But, the record with Doc there has not been very good at all. So now the Knicks or the Bucks is a 3 seed without Giannis. This is a team that many thought could possibly challenge Boston by getting Dame Lillard. Now we hear, is he unhappy in Milwaukee? Is it because of the team, or he can't find anything to do in Milwaukee? I have no idea. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic, but, is that a one-and-done scenario there as they tried to build a championship team and just how they've fallen and where they may fall to?
If Giannis doesn't play, they're going to lose that series, right? That's, I think, what we're
Yes, they are.
It's how that team is structured and built, and now the questions get a lot more existential in Milwaukee. Giannis this offseason bangs the table and does all the articles saying, hey, I want to win, and the minute me and the organization aren't aligned on that, who knows where I finish my career necessarily. They go bring in Dame Lillard, and that seems to have been a mixed bag in terms of results. Now, it's year one. We could always say, hey, you give it time to settle. We've seen even the best groups, the LeBron James-led Miami trio, needs a little bit of time to cook there. But now if you start to have Giannis's body at all compromised, and I think everyone's big fear, Dad, with a guy Giannis's size, is that looming specter of what happened with Kevin Durant. And you've got a calf injury on a bigger guy like that. If you force him back too soon, does that become an Achilles injury that all of a sudden alters the future of your franchise? And so Milwaukee's in a tough spot because they know they push their chips somewhat into the table on this year, because every year's got to be championship or bust with Giannis, but you've also kind of got to do your best to protect your franchise's main player, and that's now the task ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks as the NBA playoffs rolls along. But coming up next, we're going to talk a little college football as we head towards the NFL draft as well. The best college football writer in America, Spencer Hall, stops by next here on GoJo Golic. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato here. And as we head toward the draft and we're in college football's offseason, it's a good reminder that it all never really stops. And so we're excited to visit with our friend Spencer Hall, best college football writer in America. You can check him out over at Channel 6. You've seen him on ESPN, the SEC network, covering college football, Formula One, and the like. Got the Charity Bowl going on right now that everyone should check out at EDSBSCharityBowl.com, all going to benefit New American Pathways, great organization in Atlanta that helps refugees assimilate to life in America. And Spencer, certainly want to talk a lot about that. It's one of the coolest things that you and Holly and everyone else in your group do. The Shutdown Fullcast, obviously one of the best college football podcasts in America as well, that people can get to. But we also saw in the background with you right now, you're currently grinding through getting ready for this summer's release of the new NCAA game here. How high does that register on the scale of like things that you're looking forward to in this offseason?
Well, I'm looking forward to it, but I scheduled terribly because I will be out of the country when it releases. It's supposed to be out on my birthday. So when it comes out, I will not be in the country. In fact, I will be very out of the country. I will be like, it's not like, oh, you're going to Mexico. No, I will be as out of the country as you could get. So I have to practice now because when I leap in, everybody else is going to have like 48 or 72 hours on me. So these hands need to stay warm.
How much you're going to be behind the eight ball a little bit then, huh? How quickly can you catch up, do you think?
Well, the game changes. It constantly evolves. I'm going to have to grind some tape, probably on YouTube, on my phone, on the plane, right? I'm going to have to check listen, you got to check your Reddits because everyone on there is going to be talking about what works and what doesn't now, right? They'll be like quick slant, not an automatic first down anymore, right? Counter, great run play now. Didn't used to work a whole lot in video games. So you got to check the meta, right? As the gamers say. And then on top of that all, you got to remember classics stay classics, 4 verts, something's always open.
Yeah, when in doubt, Forverts is always your answer here. Upon that rock, we can all continue to build our church there. And Spencer, the game is kind of an interesting microcosm for where we're at overall with college football. I know a lot of the spring has been dominated by some of the headlines about this Super League conversation that I know, as you wear the Stephen Godfrey shirt right now, he's been talking about for years. But we're finally seeing like the bones of that fleshed out by powerful people around the sport right now. What have you thought of the initial plans that we've seen laid out here and how viable this thing can be?
That you can make a lot of money as a consultant by just cheating off whatever someone posted on a forum, a message board, or a blog like 15 years ago, because they all feel like fantasy proposals. They all feel like something that somebody came up with, like on a napkin, and that's fine. I understand that's how most proposals work, but they're things that we've been throwing around for years. It's also very apparent to me that a lot of them don't know what they're doing. I saw one that was going around yesterday, put together by, again, a consulting group. Start one. You guys should start one. We should all start consulting groups, because all you have to do is have a business card and one guy in a tie, and everybody will go, that guy's serious, right? Just look like you know what you're talking about. But one of them had Florida moving to a southeast region that was essentially the ACC but with Florida, and I was like, nah, never. This is not going to work. I hate it. It's never. We have to stay in the SEC. Any other proposal is absolute garbage. But on the whole, what we're trying to do is align the television product with the labor pool. That's really what's happening here. And anything to me that sort of can keep the regionality of the sport intact without turning this into a sort of Big Ten versus SEC Super League, which I don't think is a particularly appealing product or storyline, right? I don't think we want a WCW versus WWE kind of thing going on, because as nice as that was in the memory, it made for some really bad product.
I guess the question would be, things have moved along pretty quickly. If there is going to be a new format, and if you were running one of these consulting firms, what would be your format, and how soon can you implement something realistically?
You can implement it. I think the pandemic was interesting for this, because the pandemic showed that a lot of the things that we assume are givens or entirely too difficult are in fact just entirely too difficult for those in power. That's really like when they go, oh, we could never do that. The pandemic happened and they go, oh, it turns out we can do that. We can do that tomorrow. Like during the pandemic in the sport of college football, we had barnstorming. We haven't had barnstorming in the sport, since the 20s, but BYU traveled cross country to play at Coastal Carolina, like on 3 days notice or 4 days notice. We can do big things in this sport if there's just the will to do it. If we have a 16-team playoff, if we have something like that, which I frankly, I like. I think there's a way to, I love the idea. We just had one of the biggest sports events in dad culture, which is the Masters. Okay. I didn't say in the United States. I don't think the Masters is one of the biggest sporting events in the United States. I think it's the biggest for dads. And we just had that event. And you know what they have? It's essentially an 18-part challenge where everything has names. And if you have a 16-team playoff, something like that, you can incorporate bowls and they can all have names, right? And the lore we could build up around that, right? Like, hey, the Gator/Tax Slayer Bowl. Crazy things have happened there over the years. So much of the sport is about telling stories. And we have ways that we can put names to those anonymous slots, right? Southeast Regional 2 or whatever it is, Northwest Regional 1. You just come up with a nice name for it. People get very hung up on the notion that you are over professionalizing the sport. And I'm like, you unimaginative dolts, what you need to do is figure out how to tell a story. Don't call it branding. That's a bot word. That is a robotic word that people use for telling a story. And that's one of the things people love most about this sport, is that you get lore and you get people to tell stories.
Yeah, we have a lot of that lore starting to change right now. And over the last couple of years, so Spencer, I'm curious with that framework then, what's the story that we tell through the first handful of years about the portal, about name, image, and likeness, and the way that it's changed the sport, because we've gone through a couple initial rounds of people overindulging in the wild, wild west and talking about how we need to clamp down on this. But based on the sample that you've seen right now, what's a more realistic assessment of what the effect's been and where we're at with this?
I think that the portal has altered the nature of the college football program. There's now a talent prospecting point, a part of it that didn't necessarily exist to this level. You're going to have GMs. I can't wait for our first college football GM / coach clash, because, in the NFL, that's like the first thing that happens, right? Is they're like, yeah, this nerd is trying to tell me how to run my football team. This GM's like, this coach can't run a spreadsheet. And there's always inevitably some kind of clash between those two. I can't wait for that to happen in college football, because I like mess. Sorry, unless it's my program, I generally like mess, and your mess is funny. My mess is a tragedy, and we can all get to laugh about that. Additionally, I think one thing that the portal has changed is that it has, I think it's given players greater power over their own destinies. And I think that's always very difficult, because we like to tell lies about ourselves in this country. And one of them is that we favor the individual creator. We favor the entrepreneur. We favor the person who's boldly, out there striking out. No, most people in this country are like most people. They see a big guy and they go, ooh, I like big company. I like big guy. They don't actually like the little guy. We have more little guys with more power now, and that's very disturbing to people. All right. Unless it's them and they're like, well, it's my freedom, not your freedom. Your freedom I don't like. My freedom, awesome.
So you mentioned the portal. Along those lines, one of the big stories last year was Deion Sanders and how his Colorado team started when he basically remade the entire team. And the portal opened up again after spring ball now, and he has 9 players from his team that have hit the portal just now after spring. He's also come out and said Shedeur, Shiloh, and Travis Hunter should only go to certain teams in the NFL. Is the bloom off the rose there as far as what the talk was of Deion 3 games into the season last year, how the season ended, and kind of how that team is being put together now?
I think it's firmly off the rose for a couple of reasons. One, he couldn't get along with Sean Lewis, who Sean Lewis did a great job making an actual functioning offense out of cast-off parts, like a few premium pieces and mostly cast-off parts. And they did a magnificent job until, for some reason, Deion decided that he couldn't do that job, even though he did very little with, or he did a lot with the pieces that he had. So the idea that he can manage a staff, to me, is he's made several decisions where I go, okay, that's questionable. And I say that on a level of like, completely, like, I still think he's a good coach. I still think he can do the job. I just don't understand some of the decisions he's made staffing wise, particularly at the college level, like installing pro style guys in a sport where your practice is limited and where the demands of the offenses are very different, right, from year to year. So I think there may be a fundamental disconnect there too. I know he has some mobility issues, but evidently Deion doesn't leave the campus, just doesn't leave the campus to recruit, which I know maybe you're built different. Maybe you are. Like there's a 1% chance that you are completely built different and you are just that good, and your business model, which is novel and different from everyone else's, works. There's a 99% chance it doesn't. And that may be what we're looking at here. There may be some things that just, I don't know if you can get over, in some basic fundamental stuff that isn't being done at Colorado that everyone else does. Again, 1% chance you're different. I think the Colorado experiments already worked because we're talking about them and it's April 17th. When was the last time anybody talked about Colorado Buffalo football, good or bad, on April 17th? So in a sense, it's already worked. In terms of putting a reliable, trustworthy product of football on the field, that's going to be difficult, buddy.
Yeah, I think you're right. It worked depending on what your goals are for that situation. And if the goal is attention, then boy, oh boy, you have won the attention economy in a way that few things in college football can in this day and age with that team. In terms of winning the actual thing, Spencer, I know you guys are pretty fond of Michigan and what an incredible run that they went on there and that program. It seems like going into this year, though, Ohio State took this entire last stretch of years very, very personally, because that war machine appears to be back up and humming in a way that seems terrifying going into the season. Like, it seems like them, Georgia, and everybody else right now.
It does. I adore football for a couple of reasons. One, and I think we need to admit this, things go boom, and we like to see things go boom. We like to see it, like, violence is a part of the sport, and we try to legislate it, and we sometimes avoid talking about it. But ultimately, contact is at the heart of this sport, and it's gift and it's curse in a lot of ways. Another thing I love about it is that we can do this. You can take an entire offseason, and you can write all the checks, and you can hire coaches, and you can take a head coach and make him your offensive coordinator, and you can take an endless chain of talented skill players, particularly at wide receiver, and you can post cool videos in spring practice of them embarrassing people, which Jeremiah Smith, if you have not seen, is a freshman who is going to be doing horrifying things to defensive backs in the Big Ten. But there is one thing, that horrifying challenge at wide receiver needs a couple of talented fat guys on the right side of the line to step up. I love football for this. We have all of these big shiny parts, and you go, but I need 2 people to stand up over here. I got 3 linemen across the middle from the left to the center, and they're doing great, but I still need 2 pieces. And the most talented football program in the world is waiting with bated breath to see if they get that. I love that. Ohio State has every capability in the world, all the money, so much power regionally and nationally, and they still need 2 talented fat guys. Attention, talented fat guys. Columbus still needs you.
Mike, you should be real happy about that when the O-line is the center of attention. So let's go to that. As Ohio State would say, that team up north. Jim Harbaugh did what Pete Carroll did years ago, went to Seattle, and all the sanctions hit USC. Jim Harbaugh goes to the Chargers, and the sanctions hit Michigan over the recruiter violations during COVID, 3-year probation, a fine, recruiting restrictions, 1-year show cause for 5 individuals. How much effect will that actually have on Michigan as a program?
I don't think it's going to have a lot. And if you look at the overall trajectory of what Michigan is, not only over the last 5 years, but say over the last 20, is that this is a program that can cruise pretty steadily between 8 and 10 wins if you have relatively competent management. When they haven't had competent management and they haven't played to their strengths, that's when they've struggled. That's when they've had those off-schedule years of, 6 wins, some of the disasters, either under Brady Hoke or Rich Rodriguez. But on the whole, I think that it will affect them very little, particularly because you can tell me all you want about recruiting restrictions and probation and, everything else, show causes, whatever. That's not really going to matter when you just made the single biggest marketing successful marketing ploy that a program can make, which is you won. You won, right? And this is another thing about Michigan. It's not a program like Ohio State in the respect that I think that you can compete for a national title every single year. How long did it take Jim Harbaugh to do it? We waited a decade. Michigan was patient. They waited a decade. They've shown institutionally that they have that patience, and that if this is what it takes to get there, they'll do that. So I think that Sharon Moore has a very long leash in terms of expectations there. Additionally, you've got championship hangover. Championship hangover is the only undefeated team in college football. Championship hangover, really very, very few people have even mitigated that. That's why Nick Saban's amazing. That at one point, and Kirby Smart as well. Give Kirby his due. Okay, I make fun of his haircut because it's bad, but Kirby managed to keep that team focused and intense. And there's very, very, very few people who can do that, particularly when you have no real recent record of championship success. So, seeing how they handle that, I just don't think they're going to handle it the way that the coaches want them to. It's just not. It's not human nature.
The only undefeated, truer words never spoken, the only undefeated team in college football, the championship hangover. So we'll wait to see how they navigate that. But Spencer, while we've got you here, I do want to talk about the Charitibundi Bowl. We're on day 3 now of competition donation, which is one of the most incredible weaponized forces known to man. We mentioned off the top, this is to benefit New American Pathways. So if you can explain to people that might be unfamiliar, if this is their first time meeting the Charity Bowl here, how this got started and what the goal is ultimately with what you guys are doing.
So We are raising money for New American Pathways, which is a refugee service organization here in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And we do this every single year. It started over a decade ago on the old everydayshouldbesaturday.com. And it sort of followed us to Channel 6 and lives in our social channels and on the website edsbscharitybowl.com. That's edsbscharitybowl.com, where you can donate. We encourage people to give in the form of scores. So, or a number that will infuriate their rival, or perhaps pay tribute to something in your own team's history. For instance, yesterday I gave to Florida. I try to give every day during the Charity Bowl, and I gave $75.03. Why? Because 75 feet is the distance that the shoe that Marco Wilson threw in the 2020 LSU game flew from hand to turf, a total of 25 yards through the air, which I think was a really good throw for a DB. It was also pretty accurate, landed right there on the hash mark. That would be 75 feet. And then I used 3 for his number because I'd like to celebrate people who maybe made mistakes or at least made the game more interesting. Marco Wilson's a Florida legend for that. I think we should respect him. We have people, a lot of 15s popping up in Michigan donations. There's a lot of that. I'm being reminded time and time again, lest I forget. Apparently they went 15-0 last year. That happened. And every time I try to forget it, someone in my mentions is like, I gave another $150 because did you know we went 15-0 last year? These are the things that we like to see. We try to turn spite into charity. And right now we're coming up on our first goal, which is $500,000. If you can see, we have a nice little ticker at edsbscharitybowl.com, which you can follow. We're at 486 right now, but we're hopefully going to blast past 500 by lunchtime.
It is an incredible show of force every year by the Niche podcast over at the Shutdown Fullcast, somehow galvanizing the community in the way that only you guys can. So again, edsbscharitybowl.com is where you can help out, donate, and shame your enemies in the form of competition giving, which is an incredibly powerful force. Spencer Hall, you guys, again, check him out, the Shutdown Fullcast, Channel 6, where you can get 2 things for a very low price. Spencer, always appreciate the time, brother, really.
Oh, likewise. Thanks for having me on. And again, you can do that. You can also, by the way, if you would like to, you can text Charity Bowl 24 to 91999.
There we go. 91999. Check it out there. Help out if you can. An incredible cause and a great way to remind other teams we're better than you.
and Golic talking about moving on to some warmer places. We talked about college football in the last segment. So now let's talk about former Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh living by the ocean in an RV. How is that?
Are you guys part of the team or what?
Yeah, I am. We all are. Yeah, and I'm coaching for him.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. We're in Huntington Beach at the Waterfront RV Park. This is my Quantum Thor motor coach. Kind of inspired by growing up watching the Rockford Files. Got my DVDs. I've been watch that. Nothing will make you feel more like a dad than when you figure out how to dispose of the waste. Felt like a real dad. Now, G-Ro, I said this is a Class C here. Greg Roman.
How's it going, everybody?
You want to see G-Ro's?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, come check this. Check this rig out. It's like what the rock bands go around in right here.
I mean, for one person, this beats any hotel room in America. You know what I mean?
Took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Living the RV life, G-Ro.
Yes, sir.
So for people who don't know football, they think he is lying. This man comes out of his RV in a Chargers hat. They're like, oh, you like the Chargers? He's like, actually, I'm their head coach. No, you're not. What are you talking about? This is ridiculous, Coach Joe, but it's awesome. It's so good.
Wow.
I couldn't imagine being one of the other people in that RV park and looking over there and double taking and seeing Jim Harbaugh just comfortably living this life and Dad making sure that everybody knows that Greg Roman's nickname is G-Ro here. It might be unparalleled levels of dudes rock this season with Chargers. An immediate vibe, like we talked about this last year for the Houston Texans, an immediate vibe shift when you get DeMeco Ryans that comes into this organization and CJ Stroud. This is going to be so night and day different because you've got a coach in Jim Harbaugh who very clearly knows who he is. Like, that is a man with an overwhelming sense of self on display inside his RV with a DVD collection, and I love it.
Got a DVD player. I mean, listen, he and I came out about the same time. I don't even do DVDs anymore. I stream. So I'm even ahead of him in the technology department. I mean, the DVD, good gosh, I can't believe he still got that working. But, I mean, this, Mike, is the least surprising thing, right? To think that he would be doing this, getting ready for a season, would shock no one, except it's going to probably shock some of the people in the RV park as the head coach of the Chargers is walking out of an RV that he's staying in there. But a lot of alone time, that's for sure. A lot of hanging out by yourself time. I guess that's why you got the DVD player.
I mean, the hilarious part of all of this is that Greg Roman is offensive coordinator who comes over after, another stint with the Baltimore Ravens that ultimately gave way to an offense that needed evolved. And there's some very legitimate concerns about, hey, what does that offense look like now wrapped around Justin Herbert, this incredible, gigantic robot of a quarterback who we all want to see maximized. That's been the goal. And in this offense, we have questions because we saw what Lamar Jackson did this last year with an offense that finally catered a passing game around a quarterback who, God, after seeing the Jaden Daniels comp the other day where some anonymous GM or person that Jeremy Fowler article said that Jaden Daniels came out as a better pocket passer, a more complete pocket passer than Lamar Jackson. Did people not watch Lamar Jackson in college? The guy won the Heisman. I don't know how we're still doing this. But regardless, we got reminded this last season, dude can spin the rock. There's questions there, but the bigger question I have is, how does Greg Roman have the infinitely better RV between him and Jim Harbaugh, who's not hurting for cash?
It's not even close. Not even close. It must be that, listen, we know people who make money but still don't spend money. And I think Harbaugh is one of those guys where he's fine with what he has. What Roman had was fantastic. I mean, he's right. That's way better than a hotel room, much more expensive than a hotel room as well. So that was a phenomenal RV that he had. But, that team, they got some work to do, Mike. I mean, as I mentioned in the Roman Wilson interview, I mean, you lose both your receivers, your running back, your tight end. Now you bring in a couple of tight ends, you bring in a running back in Gus Edwards and, an offensive lineman. That's just on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense was a monster letdown, but they kept the guys. Remember, they had 4 players with over a $30 million cap hit, and they kept the 2 of them that were on the defensive side because they need defensive help. So we can sit there and talk about the pieces they have to fill on the offensive side, but that defense was a letdown. So that's an area that really needs to pick it up.
Yeah, there are areas like we knew the limitations on this Chargers roster. We knew the appeal of the job was basically Justin Herbert and sunshine. And right now, Jim Harbaugh is getting to love and experience both of them. But the thing about this, and like, I promise I'm not just like efforting to shoehorn something from this video into actual conversation, but like, Jim Harbaugh, especially at this point in his career, I'll be curious which version of him the NFL gets, because last time around with San Francisco, it was this idea that this jackhammer of a personality eventually wore on the 49ers front office so much that even with all the success they had, parting ways was going to eventually be the only outcome with this. And we saw at Michigan. We just talked to Spencer about this. It took him a decade there to win anything of value between getting to the Big Ten championship, the CFP, and ultimately winning a championship there. And along the way, it did feel like, hey, the guy that was doing the recruit sleepover visits at the beginning and the guy that was hosting these satellite camps and ticking off everybody else in college football kind of mellowed out over time relative to the Jim Harbaugh scale. And so I do wonder now, while we've already gotten the gimmicky stuff about putting the star rankings in lockers, if you're going to get a Jim Harbaugh who's better equipped even this time to handle that and comes in with that assurance of self that knows, hey, I'm going to set the foundation along these lines of scrimmage. I've got the quarterback, which has always been the secret sauce on these Jim Harbaugh teams, and the rest of it's going to come into play in a way that the Chargers just didn't have as Brandon Staley was trying to figure out how to do this himself.
Well, I mean, what players see is when he was in the NFL, he got to a Super Bowl, and now he was in college and got to a national championship game. You can talk about the time it took to do that, but that's what players see. And when the players go to the Chargers, they see a guy who just won the title, a guy who was in the Super Bowl. So he comes in with the credibility that he can build a championship-level team, albeit with some of the fluff, like you said, of the what star you were coming out in college, some of the stuff like that, whether, you know, it motivates some people or it doesn't. So what? The bottom line is the production. And you're right, over the years, how do you then settle to what you are? Right. And not, you know, from I'm sure there are a lot of coaches out there who have coached for a long time, how they coach the first 5 or so years of their career to where they are in their 20th or 25th year of coaching, wherever it is. They're probably a different person, except for Bill Belichick.
Yeah, except for, as we found out, except for Bill Belichick. And don't worry, Bob Kraft's going to let you know that exactly what you're getting with Bill Belichick if you bring him over there. But I don't know. Like some of the personal growth stuff does fly in the face of the decision to hire Greg Roman at all, where he comes in and we know, hey, these two have a history together. We're trying to get the band back together. But I guess if it keeps producing more content like this, and God, the Chargers social media team that is already one of the best in the business, being handed this sort of content manna from heaven seems like the kind of thing that'll sustain me, even if there are growing pains this season, because you're still in a division with the Kansas City Chiefs. And now you've got the Las Vegas Raiders that are certainly back online a little more. Denver, you know, we'll wait and see. That one feels like it's going to be a much longer rebuild for Sean Payton in ways that still make me confused why he took the job. But Dad, this Chargers team, I feel like every year until further notice is, oh, there's some hope because they've got the quarterback. Oh, we're always worried about the looming, threat of injury on this team, because that seems to, no matter who the coach has been, no matter who the quarterback's been the thing that's ultimately undone them. But at the very least now, they got the most coveted coaching candidate of this last cycle, and he already seems incredibly comfortable in his new home.
He does seem comfortable, but he was also comfortable in making some changes. Now, some had to be made from the cap side of it, but seriously, you give him the benefit of the doubt because he's won, but you wonder what kind of team it is this year. How much of a transition this year is going to be. You didn't hire Jim Harbaugh for the 2024 season. You hired him hopefully for the next decade. So I don't know where this season's going to be. It could very well, be another step back for them as he tries to assemble the team that he wants. But eventually, I think with his credentials, the ownership obviously feels he can build this team in the right direction.
Yeah, you hired Jim Harbaugh for the next decade to walk hand in hand with Justin Herbert, who you think has a chance to be a quarterback mentioned in the same breath as Patrick Mahomes, as Josh Allen, as Lamar Jackson, and finally want to see that come to fruition. All the ability that led to the contract you gave him, now matched with a head coach that's got a pretty solid history of taking quarterback prospects like that and taking them to the promised land.
sad or disappointed yesterday as we talked about Rory McIlroy possibly going to LIV and leaving PGA? Don't be, because we were all wrong. Apparently, we fell for the rumor as we discussed the possibility of it, and he just shut down all those rumors.
I honestly don't know how these things get started. I've never been offered a number from LIV, and I've never contemplated going to LIV. I think I've made it clear over the past 2 years that I don't think it's something for me. Doesn't mean that I judge people that have went and played over there. I think one of the things that I've realized over the past 2 years is, people can make their own decisions for, whatever they think is best for themselves. And, who are we to judge them for that? But personally for me, my future is here on the PGA Tour, and it's never been any different.
Okay, so this checks out, Senior, because yesterday we were saying Rory has always been against the move, respectively as he just did, but this makes a lot more sense now.
Oh, it does. I mean, I think we all would have been stunned, especially the way he came out the last couple of years and ripping LIV and ripping the players that went there, that he would take this money, even though I would have loved to him saying, my God, just being offered $850 million. He's saying that never even happened would be pretty wild. Imagine if he actually was and turned it down. It's a lot of money to turn down. His biggest change, Mike, has certainly come in what he said there about, hey, people make decisions for their own reasons. I'm not one to judge that because, he was a hellfire, when this first started, right? He was absolutely destroying these players that were leaving to go to LIV, and he was absolutely ripping them. There was absolutely this monster divide between LIV and the PGA, and now that they're looking to patch things up, I think he even realized, and we've talked about this, he was just banging his head off the wall and saying, okay, guys are doing it for the money. I get it. That's their prerogative. Now let's try and get this together. Let's get everybody together, because as players from both sides have been saying, while the purses LIV, we know the purses are great, and we know the purses have gone up in the PGA. The ratings, including the Masters, which we'll get to, are going down. So, all those great purses that you're getting, how long does that last? If all of a sudden TV ratings out there and TV partners are like, well, wait a minute, you guys, we're not getting the ratings because for whatever reason, it's just not happening. So is there going to be a shift?
I'm so fascinated by my own response to this story because I have been made so sick by the modern culture of denying allegations or denying rumors that I sit here every second Rory was talking just looking for the opening, looking for the place where he's given himself the off-ramp in case this were to come. Because Claudia was asking before we got back here, and I think it's a valid question. The outlet that this came from didn't have a background in reporting golf here, said they couldn't really verify it to the extent that we would want here, but it was a rumor that everybody was kind of picking up at that point, and where it came from and why. Because in the response, the one thing I was waiting to hear is, I would never do this. And we never heard that. And so in my mind, still, despite everything we've heard from Rory, I was like, all right, so that's not totally off the table. It sounded defiant enough. It sounded secure enough in that my future is with the tour. But for a guy that's come out and said, hey, I'm not trying to make something out of nothing here, because right now this story is just that. It's nothing. But we do wonder as this continues to go along, like you said, Dad, this idea of the merger of PGA and LIV that we've heard about and we've heard Tiger asked about and all this stuff that still hasn't happened, what that ends up looking like, and eventually if they would come knocking, because this, could be read maybe as like a trial balloon thing. Hey, what would this look like? What would that, what would it take type thing? Because the other side of this is, you mentioned everyone involved kind of getting a little bit antsy. The rating for the Masters on Sunday, 9.6 million was the rating for the final round on CBS, down 20% from last year's final round that averaged just over 12 million. And Dad, we know, no Tiger in contention, which certainly would have been a national boom, but the ending got away. Like Scotty Scheffler ended up running away and hiding with it at the very end. But for a lion's share of that day, that was a really closely contested top of the field. So I'm a little bit surprised by this.
Halfway through the round, you had a 4-way tie at the top. And guys, even though Scotty started pulling away, guys were there if they could have done something, and they all fell by the wayside. But you're right. For, a lot of that, or a decent amount of that day, it was close at the top, including that tie. So I don't know. I mean, both sides seem to recognize this. I think it was Bryson DeChambeau's, mostly his quotes being heard before the Masters saying, we got to work something out. We got to get the best players back together for the fans, for these ratings, because ratings are going to affect a lot of things from TV deals as well. So, I mean, we keep talking about this deal, but nothing is materializing. And the longer it goes, you wonder if anything's really going to happen. And if it doesn't, Liv keeps, we don't now, we have to question, is it true that they're going after Victor Hovland? That was supposedly one of the next guys they're going to. But still, the longer nothing gets done, the longer great players are at Liv, which nobody is watching. And those great players aren't on the PGA Tour, which people are watching less. And the only times they get together are the majors. So something's got to be figured out here. They keep extending what they're trying to do when nobody, I think, really has a handle on what they're trying to do.
Yeah, well, I think that's the interesting part is what we heard that rallying cry from that group was we need to get all the best players back together because people aren't watching. And then in the tournament that is the biggest name brand tournament in golf in the Masters, you had all the best players back together. You had 13 guys from Liv, including a lot of the biggest names back. And it didn't do the number there. And so is that, hey, you've eroded the confidence of your audience because they have to go so long in between bouts of getting people they care about? Is it because you took away some of the storylines? Like, remember, Dad, before all this popped up, you had Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka beef. You had all this stuff that you could sell, this constant search for the next Tiger with a bunch of the next stars there. And then you get Full Swing thrown into all of this where, hey, we're going to do some of the same storytelling that we saw work for Formula One, that we've seen work for these other sports now at a juncture. And I know friends anecdotally who that's worked for. There are people I know who have absolutely gotten into golf through Full Swing as a docuseries to help that be their onboarding to the platform. But I struggle to figure out what to take away from this because, again, if we're to believe the people on both sides of this conversation about golf and the urgency to get this back together, then you would have imagined the Masters would have produced a better number.
Yeah, I agree. And this has got to come to a head at some point because it wasn't even a year ago in June at the RBC Canadian Open where McIlroy was saying, I still hate Liv. I hate Liv. I hope it goes away, to now where he's been of really softening his stance. Once they had all gotten together, what was it that even before that was in March? Was in March where the PGA commissioner and the PIF got together in the Bahamas with the board. Tiger Woods was part of that. I mean, there needs to be something figured out here. What it is, I don't know, because Liv keeps saying we're not going away. So I don't know what is coming together that's going to bring these golfers back together if, in fact, they can't play together on the tour week in and week out. If Liv's still here, that means that's not going to happen. And it doesn't sound like with the money they're paying these players, Liv is going to tell players, yeah, you can go play on the PGA Tour as well. I don't imagine that's in their contracts, and I don't imagine that changing with the money they're shelling out. So I don't know where this one ends. I don't know the direction. Right now, though, they're all making money. We know the Liv purses are huge, and we know the PGA purses, as I said, have gone way up. So at this point, they're all making pretty good money, but you have to still think about the longevity of the sport.
Well, yeah, because I guess we always talk about this for a lot of sports, right? Like we look at, our sport in college football that we talk about all the time. There are people that always wonder, hey, is what we're doing right now to the sport and conference realignment and forsaking the regionality of the sport eventually going to erode the foundation enough to make this hurt later on when you take away the fan bases that have sustained the sport for a long time? But football's so insanely popular because violence and because history that's always going to be difficult to actually see the results of in any short span of time. For golf, a sport that's already extraordinarily difficult to broadcast, a sport that already had a comparatively smaller fan bases than football in this country here, it'll be interesting to see if this Masters rating is backed up by more as we go along with this summer and some of the big events there. If it's sort of a canary in the coal mine of, hey, we're seeing this happen faster with golf because of the nature of the sport and because of the limitations that it already had, while the sport kind of grapples with what its future is going to look like there. But we know, at least in the immediacy, the future is not going to involve Rory McIlroy going to Live instead. We get to keep hearing him say "tur" all the time, which is among my favorite things in sports. Coming up next, let's finish with more big ratings numbers next here on GoJo and Golic. right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you off into the rest of your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. The best of GoJo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, wherever you hear them on the radio. And if you missed any of those spots there or our great guests, thank you to Roman Wilson, former Michigan wide receiver, who's definitely going to be in the draft next week, even though I kept thinking it was this week because my brain hurts. And Spencer Hall, one of the best college football writers in America over at Channel 6 and the Shutdown Fullcast for joining us as well. If you missed any of that, check it out wherever you get your podcasts or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. And guys, let's start off with this. Speaking of staying inside the DraftKings family, our buddy Pablo Torre over at Pablo Torre Finds Out, doing a phenomenal job with that podcast, unearthed absolute gold yesterday. There had been a long-rumored recruiting tape that the New York Knicks had put together to try and land one LeBron James in Madison Square Garden that included, among other things, a Sopranos reunion. This is the tape that Pablo and company were able to overturn. Take a look.
Yeah, I'll take you down. Tony, I'm so glad we moved to New York. Life is so much better now.
Yeah, life's good here, Carl. Even if we are in the witness protection program.
Now, we just gotta find a place for your friend LeBron to live. What's he like?
Well, he's a modern guy, but he respects tradition.
Well, here's something classy on the east side.
Was it big enough? Going to be entertaining a lot of people in New York.
It's very expensive.
Oh, that's not going to be a problem. But you got to find something magnificent. Something there's nothing in the world like it, one of a kind, like he is.
Well, here's a place. It says it gets really loud there. Take a look.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's going to be perfect for him.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is...
Oh, my God.
Wow.
This is so impossibly college football. I can't stand it. The notion, Dad, that this would have worked on LeBron James is fascinating to me from a strategy standpoint from the Knicks here in James Dolan.
This is one of those things where you put it, this is almost like you always talk about to have that common sense person in a meeting. So you have a meeting about this, said, yeah, let's do this. Yeah, let's bring in the Sopranos. Yeah, let's do all this. There should have been someone in that room that was saying, this is, while it's going to sound cool, you realize it will have zero impact and no effect on getting LeBron to New York. This has, whatever you're trying to accomplish, it's not going to work. There was no shot of this ever working, right?
I like to think not. Like when you think of recruiting a player, like even if you were recruiting a college athlete, usually if you're trying to sell them on a place, you don't just have videos of this. You get them on the phone with said star. You get them in person and do all of this. This is the kind of stuff that college football social media teams put together to try and drum up fan interest or sell tickets or promote a game coming up like we did with Notre Dame for the game in Las Vegas doing the Hangover spoof. I did not think this was something real that a team in the National Basketball Association that has money and history in the Garden to sell would resort to here, but I guess I shouldn't hold anything back when it comes to the New York Knicks. So this is, I mean, a sea of great things Pablo's done, Dad. Finding and uncovering this that had been part of NBA lore for so long in the rumor mill was an incredible coup.
I could just see LeBron watching that, taking a minute out of his life, watching that, it finishing, LeBron chuckling, and then going on about his day like nothing ever happened.
No, he was probably going to say the answer was no. Now it's hell no. After watching whatever that was, I'm good.
Now it's no with bold and underline there. So an incredible scoop. If you didn't get to watch that on DraftKings Network, I assure you the visual is overwhelmingly worth it. Let's get to that, though, Claudia. We talked about the ratings for the Masters being a little bit down. The ratings for the WNBA draft could not be more up.
For real. We talked about the fans being in person for the first time since 2016, but everybody else around the world was also watching because they have 2.4 million viewers on ESPN. And just to compare that, the NBA drafted 3.7, MLB 744,000, NHL 681. So nobody even got close. NBA 3.7, WNBA 2.4. That's pretty impressive, guys, and that's really exciting for what is to come for the W.
Yeah, Dan, I think it's twofold. One, very exciting rookie class we have going in here, headlined by Caitlin Clark, who certainly drives the needle on this, I think, in a way that's pretty pronounced, and will continue to in the W. The interest for her, both in Indiana, where she's going, and just in general league-wide, seems so genuine, and it's going to continue to help reflect the light of so many people around that league that's been on a real high growth curve for a long time now. But, Dad, on the other side of this, it's, I think going forward, while maybe this number won't always look as big, the product looked big. It was well broadcast and put together. The players all really are bought into this, and we've got more and more names in the pipeline now because of how everyone's attention over the last couple of years has trained on women's college basketball, that this, to me, is just another sign as we're going and doing the health check on women's basketball as a whole that things are going really well and the doctor's report looks good.
Things are going well. Growth has been incredible, but it is going to be fair to ask, what will next year look like? Because while you did have some of the name value in Brink and Cardoso and Angel Reese, certainly, especially the matchup with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, this 90% of it was about Caitlin Clark, right? And what she was doing. And now she's gone to the WNBA. So, and while you did mention between Hidana Hidalgo and Juju Watkins and Madison Booker, the three great freshmen last year, and other names as well, Paige Beckers, I'm back at UConn again. The name value is still there. How much will they be able to hold from this audience? Because Caitlin Clark was the mother lode here. There's no doubt about it. We all have to understand that and realize it. While saying growth has been incredible, will it grow even more, or will it kind of hover there? Because that's still a win to me. If you can match the numbers that Caitlin Clark led, class here got, that would be incredible to me.
Yeah, user retention is, I think, the goal and mission for almost any platform. And I think women's basketball is uniquely positioned to be in a great spot for that right now, because when you invited everyone into your house, they noticed how nice everything else was, in addition to the Caitlin Clark sitting in the middle, inviting you in to begin with. And so I think that's true on both levels. And that was a cool number to see for everyone involved who's been building this thing for so long without the fanfare and without a lot of the recognition right now. I'd hope that everyone is taking solace in these numbers as a sign of, hey, the foundation laid is finally now bearing the fruit that everyone involved hoped that they would get to see. Claudia, let's get to the third. Happy trails for one of the biggest stars that we had seen come through the NBA in quite some time.
Yeah, 14 years later, Blake Griffin is retiring, and I love how he did this. He put out a post on Instagram and Twitter, all the socials. Of course, the first overall pick by the Clippers when he got drafted, 6-time All-Star. He mentions everything that he's gone through, but at the top he says he never thought he'd be the guy writing a letter to basketball. ... I'm not going to be that guy. And then he proceeds to be that guy and say, I'm so thankful for the ups, the downs, this and that. And at the end, he says, thank you, signs it off, and then says, wait, am I that guy? ? And he was going through lots of ups and downs, lots of injuries, which he mentioned, but a fun career to watch for sure with Blake Griffin.
Oh, Dad, I mean, all-time fun guy career, right? The Lob City era in the Clippers, headlined by Blake Griffin, who was one of the, late career Blake Griffin, just such a far cry because the athleticism had finally given way some. But early on, the overwhelming athleticism, the dunks that had been a part of his career at Oklahoma, one of the all-time fun players to watch, and guy off the court, incredible personality, stand-up comedy, was involved in a lot of the roasts on Comedy Central and stuff, a real five-tool player on and off the court.
Plus, like you said, 6'9", 250, big dude. The athleticism before the injury started was absolutely off the charts. Going back early on, this guy won 4 state championships in Oklahoma. His dad was the coach. By the way, Sam Bradford, the quarterback at Oklahoma's dad, owned a gym that Blake and his brother played basketball at, when they were younger. So a hell of a career that, unfortunately, once the injury started hitting, and that took away some of the athleticism, that really affected the career a lot. But man, out of the gate for a while, this dude was an incredible athlete to watch.
And that being said, found a way to continue a career even without the physical gifts being the hallmark of his game anymore, which is an incredible nod to him as a pro. So happy trails to Blake Griffin. Happy trails to you guys. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.